Just put comments on the blog. That's fine.
Exactly. The corollary is that, if you're thinking about the Ruby programming language,
okay,
the design principle there is the principle of least surprise. The way that programmers in Ruby would be inclined to think it works should be the way that it works.
Yeah.
So that's one element where we might take this lens and use it as a testing piece. Are there places in our app that are going to surprise people? It may be a negative surprise, which we don't want them to find, so we want to find that and fix it before it releases.
Right.
But there may be also opportunities to delight people. The first time I used an iPhone, for example, or an iPad, I was sitting on the couch almost giggling to myself at the experience.
Yeah.
It was. And the iPad in particular is a good example because I already had an iPhone when I got it. The first iPad had come out. I looked at it. I said, it's a big phone that I can't carry in my pocket. And, oh, wait, it's not even a phone.
Yeah, it's not even a phone. Come on.
Why do I want that? But my wife saw potential in it and said, no, let's get some. So the second iPads came out. We picked them up, and it was great. I use my iPad more than my laptop now. And I still have an iPhone, and I still use that too. And they're different devices.
Now, what was the element of surprise that got you on the iPad?
It wasn't so much the explicit surprise. I didn't expect to be delighted at the experience.
It's an indirect impact you're describing. The delight that you have is, wow, I didn't expect anything you don't expect. I didn't expect the software to suck. Is too often the experience, but also, yeah, hey, that I remember thinking recently using, I think it was one of the flight applications, like a flight booking. I was like, that worked. That was like smooth, fast. I had a good experience, got all the data I needed, and I was done. It was great. So yeah, I get what you're saying. It doesn't have to be a direct technical observation in a test, but you might still use it as a way to say, do we think the anticipation of the experience, is it going to be delightfully surprising to our end user? Yeah. Right.
And, but that also illustrates that these lenses are very much heuristics. There are times when they apply, and there are times when you might pull out one of these cards and say, that really doesn't apply to my software at all.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't, you don't have to use a set of 100 lenses every time you're doing testing. But at the same time, having a reference of some sort where you say, these are different ways I could look at it, whether it's Elizabeth's sheet or Ricard's quality characteristics, or even taking Jesse's deck of cards and getting ahead of my blog series and applying more than the first three.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do, and if this doesn't go well, we'll edit it out. Otherwise, you're in.
Okay.
Pick a random card, and let's try to figure out how it connects to testing. Would you do that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So why don't you pick a number between 1 and 100? I'll let you pick the thing.
70. I was born in 1970, so 70.
All right, so lens number 70. The lens of story. To be sure the story in your game is as good as it can be, ask yourself these questions. Does my game really need a story? Why? Why will players be interested in this story? How does the story support the other parts of the tetrad? Aesthetics, technology, mechanics. Can it do a better job? How do the other parts of the tetrad support the story? Can they do a better job? How can my story be better?
Okay.
So the first things that are occurring to me are workflows, the story of the how the problems that the user wants to solve.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm sure at least the people in my practice at Magenic have perhaps tired of hearing me say is that people don't buy software because they want to collect software. At least most people. In the world of the internet, there's probably someone out there who has a software collection.
I still own some of the old Nintendo games and also an Apple IIe. But that's not.
Yes, but are you buying software now to add to that collection?
No, I'm not, and I don't think anyone is gainfully employed doing that unless they're buying and selling and trading. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, this ties back to it's one of the principles of the context-driven school of testing, the original principles that came up, where the software is designed to solve a problem, and if the problem is not solved, then the software doesn't work.
Yeah.
So there's that story of what are people trying to do with the app. If you're talking about a desktop publishing app, maybe they're trying to make a Christmas letter for their family, or a yard sale poster,
right,
or an art project where it's one of those, have you seen this sign papers with a picture of the sign itself on a phone pole and the little tear off strips that says now I have, or anything like that. So this could be taking us down the path of scenario testing. Sure.
Or integration testing in a very technical sense, even.
Yep.
You know what I thought? I thought about, the breadcrumb trail sometimes you see up near the menu bar at the top that sort of shows you the depth of the level of depth you're in. Maybe part of a 1, 2, 3, step 4, like the steps of a checkout for e-commerce. Well, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. They take you very explicitly through the story of your purchase. I thought that might be. I also thought.
That's good.
I also thought the literary references to say, like a climax and a denouement. So there's, you're moving through the software, and there's, to link it back to surprise, there's a moment of excitement where you've achieved something, maybe solving the problem or a step, or like whenever you click on Skype and suddenly it connects and you can see the person or hear the person you're talking to. There's a climax in the story and then X happens and it's exciting and it's surprising. And then there's a denouement, like logging off and everything cleans up nicely. I mean, yeah, okay, cool. All right.
Yep. And then going back to that question where he was talking about the tetrad, which I'm not far enough in the book to know that, but the aesthetics, the technology, and the mechanics, that sort of thing. Does those workflows, those breadcrumbs, those actions, that story, does that fit with the UI of the application?
Yeah.
Does it fit with the underlying technology that's in use? The other functionality. I can see both of those questions. Could we increase the story to better tie into the user experience somehow?
Sure.
Could we increase the user experience to better fit the story? I think those tie in really well there too.
Right. You think of an app that's used to gather customer feedback versus an app that's supposed to give you pretty colors spinning on the screen for fun. Two very different emotional contexts, or the expectation, the amount of time you might use the app. Like, yeah, okay. Very interesting. Protagonists, antagonists in the story. The villain. Maybe there is a villain. Clippy could be the villain in your story. Indeed. So this is really interesting. You, like you say, this sort of struck you in the context of training and helping people sort of learn to adopt different perspectives or expand their awareness that there are different lenses. And I forgot for a second, but you also teach BBST courses. Is that right?
Not officially.
Not officially.
I have.
You have.
I was at Florida Tech when Kem was starting to make the videos.
That's right. Yeah.
I have taught both Testing 1, which is the college course version of BBST,
Got it.
as well as the Testing 2. Actually, Kem and I co-designed the Testing 2 course,
okay.
Which is more programmer testing focused. And as far as I know, has never been turned into a set of lectures.
A set of,
or videos and all that.
Yeah.
I am doing some work with the BBST internally. I am not, I haven't come to any arrangements with Kem to sell training or compete with him and Becky.
Yeah, I and very good for saying that. I wasn't actually talking about it. I'm more interested in your understanding of BBST and sort of, is this kind of practice in sort of how you're teaching lenses something that how does it overlap if somebody signs up and goes and takes a BBST course? Where do these things overlap? What do we learn there? Or is that a completely stupid question? We can edit it out.
It's not a stupid question. Certainly there is overlap. I mean, I was at Florida Tech for 5 years. Went in with experience in testing, and still found the experience transformational. I can't point to a bigger influence on my testing philosophy than Kemp. So I'm positive it overlaps. And certainly he talks about different quality characteristics and thinking about different aspects of it. I don't recall him ever using the word lens. He very well might have. Certainly there are many, many concepts that I hold to be true now that originated with him. I don't know if I can't point to a specific piece of BBSD at this point.
Yes, and especially if we perpetually give props and credit back to the people who sort of planted all these things in the evolving industry and practices and disciplines that we call software testing, which brings us to the conversation that you and I may have in the next podcast about the schools of testing, which would be great to have because James was on giving a very good rant about the different schools. But we'll do that in the next podcast. That would work fine.
Yeah, that'll be great.
That'll be very awesome.
To tie back to James's rant, I was re-listening to that episode, and at the end of that podcast, he was talking about systems thinking.
Yes.
And how systems thinking is looking at different models of the system. I have not studied systems thinking yet. It is on my list of things to do, yes. But that seems very much to be in parallel, if not directly, expressing the viewpoint of the lens metaphor that I'm using as well.
Actually, it's funny because we talked about the movie Mind Walk, which is a casual way to get people who aren't into reading geeky techno science books to watch a movie. And the nice thing about this Mind Walk movie, and I just keep giving a shout out because I love the movie, there is a nuclear physicist, a poet, and a politician, which are the three characters in the film, having this conversation. So it's a wonderful three different lenses to the metaphor extension. So again, go watch Mind Walk if you haven't watched that. It's a marvelous film.
Have you found it online yet? I remember you saying on when talking to James that you have a VHS tape, and that's about the only place.
I did, and I just moved recently, and I found the VHS player with the tape in it. So maybe we'll turn it into a digital format. I think we'll find it. It'll end up on Netflix, or it'll float out there. It's probably in full length format, sitting on YouTube at this point, for all we know. But it's Sam Waterston when he was really, really young, so that's always nice. But yeah, we also mentioned, I think James mentioned the Weinberg book, and there's another interesting book on the same subject that I think I posted on the recent cast book list, which was Never Pure, I think, is the one book.
Oh, yeah.
Never Pure. It's out on you put that with Goodreads, right? Goodreads, look for Cast 2014, I think is the list you have out there, right? Yeah,
actually, and thanks for the plug. I wasn't able to go to Cast this year. I was
so
sad about that. But it was a slower time. I was able to carve out a couple days, watch the live stream feeds of the talks that they shared, which I was incredibly grateful that Cast does that. It was a way to connect virtually with many colleagues and friends that I've known for years, and just get some good testing content. And watching Twitter, watching these live streams, starting to capture all of the books that people mentioned.
Well, yeah. In every session, people are mentioning, I read this book and here's what I thought, you should read it too.
Yep. And we end up with like 62 books or something like that on the list of just from the conference. I've got enough reading there to last me a good long time.
Very long time. And to recap the lens, The Art of Game Design from Jesse Schell, Schell. Andy, we always ask folks towards the end of an episode, where can people contact you? And are you going to be out doing any conferences or presentations in the upcoming few months?
Yeah, actually. So, the best place to find writing would be my blog, testerthoughts.com.
Testerthoughts.com, go.
Very infrequently posting there. Would like to get better at it. I'm going to say that I'm going to get better at it, and now you all can hold me accountable.
That's fine. You and I can challenge one another to find in our copious free time to keep blogging, but we have to keep doing it. It's true.
Definitely.
Cool.
And then in Chicago in early October is the Digital QA Summit. And I'm going to be speaking there. Keith Klain's going to be speaking there. Karen Johnson. Kate Falanga and someone else who I should remember and I'm forgetting. So I apologize to the person the other tester who will be there. But
well, we don't know who they are, and they don't know who they are, but they're going to be there. So digital QA